Hi, I'm Spencer Christian. On this episode of Tracks Ahead, we take a luxury run on the Golden Eagle as it treks through the breathtaking Russian landscape. Also, an Indianapolis HO gauge worth checking out. Plus, an interactive layout that brings Coney Island to life. But first, a visit to the Tweetsie Railroad's historic coal-powered narrow gauge line. Let's get started.
Welcome to Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Back in 1866, the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad started operating in the Appalachian Mountains. The little narrow gauge line was the access point for many mountain communities, until the advent of highways, motor traffic, and the cost of operation forced its closure in 1950. It's here that we find the Tweetsie Railroad, a Wild West theme park adventure.
Tweetsie is one of the oldest theme parks in America. It's been here since 1957. Started off as an excursion railroad with a train ride and a picnic area, and it kind of added a souvenir shop and some rides and some restaurants, a zoo, so now it's a full-fledged theme park.
The centerpiece of the line is the number 12 locomotive.
Number 12 locomotive, which is also out here today, is the only surviving locomotive from the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad. Gene Autry bought it in 1953 from some railroad enthusiasts in Harrisonburg, Virginia. They bought it and operated there for a couple of years. My uncle talked to Gene Autry, convinced him to sell his option for $1, and brought it here to Blowing Rock in 1956, and it opened on July 4th, 1957.
The little engine required extensive work before it could be put into service.
It was taken to the Hickory shops by Frank Coffey, who was the master mechanic for Southern Railroad and the Hickory shops. And it needed just about a complete rehaul, and which he did down at that location. And then it was trucked here to this site when Tweetsie Railroad was started.
Soon, another steam engine was added.
The Yukon Queen is locomotive 190. It was built in 1943 by Baldwin Locomotive Works. It was used by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers up in Alaska. And it was purchased after the park was open.
It takes a lot of maintenance to keep steam locomotives operational. To do that, the Tweetsie Railroad has a complete steam locomotive shop.
We rebuild for not only take care of our locomotives, but we do work for other people all around the country, including Walt Disney World, Busch Gardens, the U.S. Forest Service. Years ago, we did some work for Dollywood and Spencer shops, all around the country.
While Robert likes the mechanical side, there is something else that delights him on a daily basis.
The best thing about working at Tweetsie Railroad is the interaction with the children and the guests. They love the trains, they love the cowboys and Indians, and they have a great time. And it's wonderful to be able to put smiles on children's faces.
Listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the Tweetsie Railroad is an experience sure to delight everyone who comes its way.
The major draw here is the mountains of North Carolina. The Blue Ridge Mountains are lovely, and Tweetsie itself has become a major tourism draw too. We get about 250,000 visitors a year, and that's in about a 140-day operating season. We're open from mid-April through early November. We have 12 other rides in the park, from kiddie rides up to some minor thrill rides as well. Of course, the train ride is a ride as well. We have a chairlift that goes up to Miners Mountain, which has additional rides.
The Tweetsie Railroad is quite the draw for tourism in central North Carolina.
For nearly 60 years as an amusement park, it's been a huge attraction, and millions of families have come here over those 6 decades to visit the amusement park and ride the train. It brings a lot of jobs to our area. Every year they're employing hundreds of people, and then filling up hotels throughout the summer and fall. So economically, it's got just a major impact on our area.
Riders will always find something special happening on their adventure.
The train ride itself is 3 miles long. It takes about 20-25 minutes. It's a Wild West train ride, so I guarantee you're going to be held up by bandits and attacked by marauding Indians.
But sometimes it's just enough to watch the scenery pass and experience an old-time train ride, complete with coal smoke.
We're a very family-oriented park here, and a lot of times you see 4 generations, which is really nice to see. And they come here and They enjoy time with their family and the rides, and it's very low key, and it's just a great experience. So we want them to come away having had created memories with their families and friends, and that's what we try to encourage here at Tweetsie.
Parents will tell us time and time again that their kids came here and they can't talk about anything else except coming back to Tweetsie Railroad and seeing the locomotive again.
Still in operation over a century after its birth, the narrow gauge line and its signature whistle still echo through the Appalachian Mountains.
Coming up, we visit Coney Island by way of a Cincinnati area rail theme park. This layout is not only interactive, but seriously realistic. But first, along the way, a stop in Indianapolis to check out Jim Munn's HO scale layout.
Indianapolis, Indiana is home to this fully operational HO scale layout named the Chicago and Northwestern Christie Division.
Fully operational, one person can do it through the Digitrack system. Like I said, Mike and I do a two-man. We've had up to 7 people here on a syrup session. One will run a yard. We run 2 to 3 two-man crews. The ore train can go out, or somebody can go from the ore train to the passenger train and put a little thing in it. We're not very technical. I don't have a computer system to operate it. It's simple.
Oh, I think it's a great layout. It's probably one of the better ones in the country. It's very detailed, and you have to realize Jim did this all by himself. He didn't have help. A lot of the great layouts have multiple people working on them and stuff, but Jim actually did this all himself.
Proprietor Jim Munns named the layout after his first granddaughter, with the yards, stations, and towns named after other grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. Munns has worked on this layout for over 16 years and chose September 1955, Chicago and Northwestern in the Midwest, as its time period backdrop.
The Chicago Northwestern got rid of steam in '56, so this is a transition area. Throughout the country, everybody was going from steam into diesel. So we can mix, with this transition area, you can mix everything together. I like the heavyweight passenger cars, and they left in the 50s. So it's kind of that time of a year where we can do just about anything. There isn't anything on the layout that's newer than 1955. I check every builder date on freight cars, check every automobile has to be 1955 or older. That's the one part that I'm very sticky on. We run a mixture of mainly freight, but passenger and the ore train. The ore mine and the ore yard, they feed each other. The different towns have unique businesses to kind of the Wisconsin area, to things I like, just to feel realistic, but not be what they call prototypical.
Munns works in HO scale because of its size.
In HO, you can get a lot of things going in a smaller space than you can with O gauge, even though you can do a lot more detail. N scale is great for space, but then it's hard to, especially as we get older, to do the detail that I wanted to achieve.
He started out with the scenery and then the buildings.
They're all kits or a few scratch belts. Everything changed from the kit bashed. And I've changed over the years. This building didn't look right, so I put a different one I liked better in there. And it was just a matter of what I felt worked good in that area. Now I love wood kits that are actual wood. because you can get the texture and realism. This whole area, a lot of it is plaster buildings from downtown deco, because it just looks, the feel is more of brick versus the plastic kits.
Layouts are never really finished. There are always little details to be done. In Mund's case, he's going to add another yard and a connection to the Milwaukee Road.
In the 1950s and 60s, soda shops, hot rods, and drive-in theaters were all over America. But in Cincinnati, Ohio, there was no place quite like Coney Island.
The park actually got its start back in the 1870s as a picnic grove, and eventually became an amusement park. 1925 was the big year that it actually added a lot of rides. And back in the 60s, it was our big park in Cincinnati.
And here at Entertainment Junction, a stunning recreation is bringing the beloved amusement park back to life. Don Aders is the owner and operator of Entertainment Junction. A while back, he and a few fellow train lovers got together to build one of the world's largest indoor train displays. And they have more than 80 trains running through different eras of American history. But in 2012, the folks at Entertainment Junction decided to recreate this local classic.
Our Coney Island display is a replica, an exact replica of Coney Island Amusement Park. So we actually took one of its highlight years, 65. All the rides and all the games and all the buildings are exactly as it was in 1965. In Coney, we actually have the roller coaster, which their signature ride was the Shooting Star. We also have the Wild Mouse, a haunted house. We have a Tumblebug. We have the rocket rides. We actually have the train around Lake Como, the turnpike cars that the kids would ride. It's probably one of the most original replicas of any amusement park that is to scale and all working that I know of in the world.
Almost everything was built from scratch by volunteers. And several of the moving parts were programmed by volunteer Steve Carr. He's usually in charge of making sure the trains on the main layout are running.
We have approximately 50 small computers that are managing all the operations of the trains. That includes multiple trains on the same track, sometimes in opposite directions, sometimes following each other around.
So when they decided to build the Coney Island replica, they used the same technology to animate the different rides.
We have everything computerized currently, but now we were going to try to update it with voltage. In 2013, we actually were finishing the second floor display, and we had a space that we were looking at either a carnival, a zoo, or an amusement park. And we knew the amusement park was going to cost the most. However, we also knew that it would have the most wow factor. So because of the wow factor, and especially of having the Shooting Star roller coaster, it's a 40-foot long roller coaster that works with gravity. And it's just added a lot of excitement to our facility.
Raymond Hughes is the volunteer coordinator and former volunteer himself. He was also part of the planning process to make sure that the project could be done with their volunteer effort.
We decided that maybe it would be neat to do something local to our community. Then we discussed it, and then we decided, well, we could probably get away with that. We could probably do that. And we've had a lot of volunteer work on it. Some of the rides were specifically done with volunteers, and some of them we actually paid to have them built because they were so complicated, and we had such a short amount of time to work on them.
Charlotte Hughes was one of the volunteers who worked on the Coney Island display. But she was also very involved in the construction of their layout. And she says there's a lot to the process.
We research the various buildings that we put on the layout. Most every model on the layout is built from scratch. And we look up historical photographs, actually dimension the buildings from the photographs, use selective compression so that they're not full scale, because this can be overwhelmingly large in a G-scale environment.
But since the folks at Entertainment Junction have a certain eye for detail, visitors get a chance to see each feature come to life, whether it moves or not.
I've talked to thousands and thousands of people all the time, and some of the memories, the nostalgia that it brings back. I mean, people actually remember dancing at Moonlight Gardens. I got into it to actually have something to do in retirement, and it's certainly given me a lot to do. And I would have done it all over again, knowing what I know now. Talking to the people and getting their feedback and their joy. Some of the stories are just, unbelievable, and I've loved every minute of it.
Hi, I'm Dave Ball. One of the biggest challenges in bringing Tracks Ahead to life was always to not only find the most interesting rail journeys in the world, but somehow to get ourselves on that train. This next Classic Tracks story is maybe the pinnacle of those efforts. The Trans-Siberian Railroad is the longest rail line in the world, crossing an amazing 8 time zones on its way from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. There's no doubt that a trip on the Trans-Siberian Golden Eagle is the rail trip of a lifetime.
The Trans-Siberian Railroad, running for over 6,000 miles and covering 8 time zones, this line of steel connects the glittering capital of Moscow with the far eastern port city of Vladivostok. Started in 1891 by Tsar Nicholas II, the line was intended to unite Europe and Asia and unlock the riches of Siberia. Taking 25 years to complete, by 1916, with the bridge across the Amur River, tracks stretched from the Baltic to the Pacific. Completely electrified only since 2002, the line serves a vital link for the Russian nation and opens up the vastness of land to everyone. If you're interested in travel, you have no doubt dreamed of one day riding this fabled line.
It's on everybody's bucket list, I think. Just about every schoolboy's bucket list to travel on it one day. Even if they don't, it's on the list.
There is no better way for Westerners to experience this vast country than by traveling the line on the Golden Eagle Trans-Siberian Express.
In 2007, we launched the Golden Eagle, which is Russia's premier train. 21 carriages, totally en suite, high quality dining, a luxury cruise train.
The starting point of our journey is Vladivostok. The home of the Russian Pacific Fleet, the city was closed to foreigners until 1991. Now anyone can walk through the arsenal, which has been protecting the city since the 19th century. Our visit will take us to the World War II Fleet Submarine Exhibit and Navy Memorial. Plus, we'll visit the Arseniev Museum to see some examples of the aerial wildlife, including the famed Siberian tiger. As our train pulls into the station, the crew and passengers alike get ready for this 2-week journey.
A lot of people come to visit our country, but they only come flying in to see Moscow, St. Petersburg, probably a couple other places in the European part of the country. And the real Russia is not only that. The real Russia is vast and huge. And to understand how big and how beautiful and how different and varied it can be, this is the best way of doing it.
Tatiana will be our guide for the next 2 weeks.
Khabarovsk usually was the showcase for the Soviet Far East, and it was historically a merchant place, a center of commerce, starting from the 19th century. So streets there were made very nice and wide. There are a lot of beautiful architecture in that city, and it's experiencing the boost of development and construction at the moment. And also you will see the beautiful Amur River, the widest river that the Trans-Siberian crosses, and we will cross the Amur there in Khabarovsk by the longest bridge on the whole Trans-Siberian, the bridge that is about 2.5 kilometers long. We are only going to spend half a day in one other city, and we are going to visit the national park that's located in about 50 kilometers from the city. the national park called Tarouch that will provide you with the most amazing, beautiful scenery of the countryside Mongolia. That's the real Mongolia, not the city, but the very beautiful landscapes and families of herders living in the girths in their traditional lifestyle.
Before we head west, we'll stop in a village close to Ulan-Ude, the capital of Eurasia.
We are in Tarbogatai village, that is the center of Old Believers culture. The population of the city is about 5,000 people, and mostly Old Believers live here. Here we can see one church that was built on the money of the locals, as well as the museum with the items of everyday life of the Old Believers. Apart from it, we can see traditional houses with the people who are ready to welcome us here and show how they live and how they used to live.
The largest freshwater lake in the world, Lake Baikal, is probably the gem of our trip. Traveling on a section of the old Circumbaikal Railway, everyone gets a look at the stunning scenery, which is beautiful in any weather. A dip in the lake is supposed to add years to your life.
It was very cold. Well, it's something I wanted to do for a long time, and I finally did it all the way in. All the way in.
Oh, come on! Come on! Ow. You just can't stay too long, that's all I can tell you.
Our next stop is Irkutsk, the city that's used to be the capital of Siberia for a very long time. Relatively small, but quite old, 350 years. It has a lot of culture and a lot of education and a lot of architecture and a lot of history in it. And it provides all different kinds of experiences. We will be walking through the city. We will have a visit to the house of Prince Volkonsky, one of the exiled Decembrists, with a very nice concert there.
For the train staff, the time on board is just like any hotel. Napkins are folded, food is prepared, meals are served, and beds are made. For the passengers, the days can be spent relaxing, catching up on photos and email, or just watching the passing trains or the small villages and miles of forest that fly by the window.
Our next stop will be Yekaterinburg, the city that's located on the border of Europe and Asia. That's when we cross from Siberia into European Russia. And also, nowadays the city is associated with the names of the Romanovs. That was the last place where they lived, and that was where they were executed. We're going to make a stop by the big cathedral on the blood, constructed in their memory and in the memory of everybody who died during the Civil War.
Kazan is an ancient city which recently celebrated its 1,000th year. A mix of Orthodox and Tatar cultures, it sits astride the Volga River. For Russians, the city has a special meaning. It is home to the famous Russian singer Fyodor Shalapin. Some of his repertoire is presented at a special concert.
And we terminate our journey in the capital of Russia, in Moscow. That's the most cosmopolitan and the most fast-developing, the most hectic, but the most interesting and thriving city in the whole country. City that has a lot of history, a lot of culture, and a lot of most interesting and beautiful places to see.
What do our fellow travelers have to say?
We've enjoyed it. I think it's been very good. The food's been nice. The countryside has been lovely to see, and I think the tour's been well conducted.
We have a world map at home on the back hall wall, and it has pins where we've been, and I kept saying, look at this whole big part of the world, no pins. We need to go there.
I like very much. I must say, I've been to Siberia before, but this has been absolutely fabulous trip.
Do it. It's the only thing I can say because it's just been so good.
forget about the cost, anything like that. I think it's just been a wonderful experience.
The Golden Eagle Trans-Siberian Express did indeed show us the vastness of Russia, a new and fascinating part of the world, and it did so in style.
While one thinks of snow and maybe Dr. Zhivago when the Trans-Siberian Railroad comes to mind, Dave and crew came away from this trip with a whole new appreciation for Russian style, culture, and rail travel. Understandably so. Well, that's all for this episode. Please join us next time for more Tracks Ahead.